The existence of the supernatural has zero to do with history. It has everything to do with philosophy and theology.
Which are great subjects, fun to study.
Well, then don't stand there and tell me that it has to do with history. It has nothing to do with history. Oh, guess what? I worship a Jew.
No kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I worship a Jew.
So what's that mean? Shouldn't you be bowing down to me or something?
I insist that both the Quran and the New Testament give us very accurate, historically fair presentations of both Muhammad and Jesus. What's the criteria that I personally use to determine credibility of a historical document?
And not just for the Quran and the New Testament, but also for the Old Testament and for Buddha and for Confucius and all that.
You bet. Whenever I'm confronted by a document that claims to be historical, I'm a skeptic, but not a cynic. I don't reject history as bunk. That's why I would debate someone who says the Holocaust never took place. It's just a Jewish plot. No, we can know something historically.
This isn't in the Roman writings. There's no record of this slaughter.
Eusebius records it wonderfully.
Schizophrenia is a disease which is common.
That's right. Jesus was a schizophrenic. And so were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were all a bunch of schizophrenics. How on earth can you read the Gospels, the teachings of Christ, and conclude that the guy had mental problems? How on earth can you read the Sermon on the Mount and conclude that Jesus had mental problems? Come on.
You can show that there was a beginning to the universe, and therefore a cause. It doesn't necessarily shed any light on whether the cause was intelligent or not. I see you've already given us some various forms of the theological argument. I wonder if you had any other various proofs for a more specific type of cause that you would show points towards Christianity or not.
None that would point towards Christianity. But one of the reasons that I am convinced there has got to be some type of God is moral absolutes. Dostoevsky writes in The Brothers Karamazov, if there is no God, everything is permissible. He's right. If there is no God, there is no conscious mind prior to the human mind who creates and defines right and wrong, justice and injustice. Which means it's the human mind who creates right and wrong, justice and injustice. Which means the Nazi has his or her own definition of justice and injustice. The white South African has his or her own definition of justice and injustice. You have yours, I have mine. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's all relative. Right and wrong are simply the creation of the human mind. Talk to a different mind, you get a different definition. My experience is that although there might not be a lot of moral absolutes, there are objective morals. For instance, I am convinced that evil exists. A lot of my friends back up in Connecticut used to disagree with me until 9/11. 9/11 occurred, the World Trade Center came down, and all of a sudden a lot of moral relativist friends of mine became moral absolutists, saying that is absolutely evil. Absolutely wrong. Well, the only way there can be a moral absolute is if there is some mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines a right and a wrong. So moral absolutes point us to a moral lawgiver, some type of creator, some type of God.
How do you then sort of reconcile that to the existence of evil?
In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. The Bible does teach that God is perfect morally. The Bible does not teach that God is perfect, meaning by that he's the perfect computer that spews out perfect computer's printouts. Instead, quite to the contrary, the Bible teaches that the all-powerful God chose to limit his power by creating us free. You and I have gifts of creativity. You can create that which is good. You can create that which is evil. I can do the same. And evil is a result of human beings, spiritual beings like Satan and angels, creating evil. I do it on a regular basis. I create evil. I create good on a regular basis also. I'm convinced that's true of all of us. At times, you're creatively explosive, and goodness comes out, and at other times you're creatively evil, and people get hurt. I'm just like you.
If God knows everything that's going to happen, wouldn't him creating something that he knew would be evil be sort of like creating evil?
When we say that God knows everything, God knows what I am going to do tomorrow, We do not mean that God writes on a piece of paper what I'm going to do tomorrow, locks it in a bank vault, and then I've got to do what's on the piece of paper. That's determinism, that's fatalism. The Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible instead teaches that God is eternal, which means although you and I are locked into the dimension of time, God is outside of the dimension of time, which means due to his perspective outside of the dimension of time, God sees tomorrow today. So he's not forcing us to do what we do tomorrow. We are free moral agents. But due to his perspective outside of the dimension of time, he is in a position to see what you and I will freely choose to do tomorrow.
If he's perfect and knows everything that we're going to do, why wouldn't he create creatures with free will that would always do the right thing?
God cannot do anything. God cannot make 2 + 2 = 5. God cannot create a round square. And God cannot create a free human being and then force them to do something.
I'm a student, sir. I'm a history student. I've had the opportunity to read a lot of text, a lot of native text.
Good.
Native text talks about what happened to him. And you have to discount the supernatural.
Oh,
Because
why do you discount the supernatural? Why?
Where do you see it around you right now? If someone's coming back from the dead?
Wait a second. How does history teach you that you have to discount the supernatural? How does history teach you that?
Evidence. That's all I can...
No, sir. The existence of the supernatural has zero to do with history. It has everything to do with philosophy and theology.
Which are great subjects, fun to study.
Well, then don't stand there and tell me that it has to do with history. It has nothing to do with history. It has everything to do with your philosophy
You're asking me to work...
and theology. No, I'm asking you to be historically honest. And understand that the Gospels are historically reliable because you put them through tests. What are your tests that you use as a history student to determine whether a document is historically reliable?
As much evidence as I can find through reading one book or another book on a subject. Read multiple books on a subject.
Good. We got 4 of them. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Multiple books.
Well, no, I read, so let's say I read about the Cortez conquering of the Aztecs.
Yes.
I've got the Spanish account and I've got the native account.
Good.
The native account is full of all this supernatural stuff that they believed in.
Yeah.
No account of that in the Cortez account.
Fine. So you read the Gemara, which is a very hostile record of Jesus. But at least they had the honesty to say, and he performed a lot of miracles, but he was a fraud. Yeah, and you read the great Jewish historian Josephus in Antiquities 18.3.3, and he talks about this is historical Jesus who died and then rose from the dead, supposedly. And all of a sudden you're going, wow, this Josephus didn't believe in Jesus, but he's talking about this historical resurrection maybe happening. So you got to start opening your mind and saying, I better go back and be honest about my philosophical presupposition, and is that really coloring my view of the text? I can't look a Muslim in the face and say, you want to know why the Quran is wrong? Because it talks about God. I mean, good gracious, what a philosophical bias.
Good.
Yeah, and be intellectually dishonest. That's real intellectual dishonesty. You know, Muslims, the reason the Quran is wrong is because it talks about God. Oh, gosh, that's so narrow-minded, it's scary. That's my naturalism and materialism coming right to the fore, and I'm just so biased by my philosophical presupposition, it's incredible.
Point where I'm comfortable, and it's like, what would there be to gain? You know?
Right. Right. Well, I can't tell you how much I respect you intellectually. I can't thank you enough for being as honest as you are, sir. I respect it. You off the charts. All right. Now, my experience is that real joy, real satisfaction in life comes about, to a large extent, by understanding meaning and purpose in life.
Actually, the one point I wanted to bring up earlier was you talked about how the Big Bang you would get, you obviously needed a cause. How did you, there's 2 things from right here. One was, you said you took historical evidence from the Bible.
Right.
And you said you took a step of faith.
Right.
What made you take that step of faith? And what made that
Good.
What made that necessary to take that step of faith?
Okay, good. Then I want to go back because I was trying to remember who wrote The House of the Dead, which emphasizes the whole importance of meaning. So please remind me in case I forget it.
Okay.
All right. Okay, you're asking me, Cliff, why did you take that step of faith?
Or why accept faith in the first place? Faith to me means taking something not based on evidence, but without evidence.
Thanks. I would hate that type of faith. I reject that type of faith.
Okay.
I call that type
Isn't
of
that
faith
the
blind
dictionary
gullibility.
Definition of faith?
Pardon?
Isn't that like the dictionary definition?
No.
Of faith? Okay.
Definition of faith is evidence of reliability plus commitment. I go to an airport. I see a hunk of metal.
Well, commitment doesn't make something true, right?
No, that's for sure.
Right.
So that's why I say evidence of reliability plus commitment equals faith.
Okay.
No evidence of reliability plus commitment equals blind gullibility for me. Don't go that route. You'll get ripped off. People will eat your lunch, right? Demand evidence of reliability before you make a commitment. Don't you just marry anybody.
Right.
Make sure she loves you and she's committed to you,
Right.
right? And if you don't have that evidence that she's reliable, I think you'd be a fool to marry her.
Right.
Okay? Now, that's what faith is for me. Faith for me is going to the airport, seeing the hunk of metal, saying, this hunk of metal is going to bring me safely to Austin, Texas. Give me a break. But then I see the words, Boeing, American Airlines. And I say, the evidence is that that hunk of metal was put together by reliable mechanics. Based on that evidence of trustworthiness, reliability, I make an incredible commitment. I put my body on that hunk of metal.
I prefer to call that confidence, but I guess that's just semantics.
Okay, good. That's okay. I'll agree with you. Confidence. So I have confidence in Jesus Christ based on the evidence that he's reliable. I can promise you, sir, if Jesus Christ had been a first century David Koresh, I would never believe it.
Wouldn't it make more sense then, given that thought of logic, for you to research every single God that has ever been invented so you can make the right decision instead of just comparing Muhammad versus Jesus, and go back and, like, say I researched a certain deity and brought it to your attention, you didn't know about it. Wouldn't it behoove you to look up that deity, compare it to your God? So basically you have infinite amount of time to be looking up instead of, basically attaching yourself to the Christian God.
Okay,
And,
good.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Given what you said, that's what I get from it. It would
Fine.
benefit you more to compare gods that have been created throughout time versus your God, which I'm sure you don't know every God that has ever been created.
And that's why 10 years ago when
So you should still be searching for
a
the
student
truth.
here came up to me and said, Cliff, the evidence is that this other individual rose from the dead. I had to take him seriously. I said, fine, where's the evidence? He went and found a book. We went across the street down there, sat in a restaurant, and read the text. And as we read the text, I said, look at this. The literary style of this text is mythology, isn't it? And after looking at it closely, he said, you're right. You do not have an historical record of a resurrection that's credible other than the resurrection of Christ when it comes to religions. Osiris? It's not historical narrative. It's clearly mythology, Egyptian mythology. And yes, there's mythology of dying gods and rising gods, but you don't have it in historical narrative like the gospel.
But Carl Sagan also said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I don't see any extraordinary evidence presented. Like if I say, for instance, I just had biology class. Now you would believe me because that's not, out of the ordinary. There's people who have gone to biology class, so you could say, yeah, he probably did. So you're not really taking me on blind faith. You're taking it back to your analogy about a Boeing plane. Like I will trust a Boeing plane, but I don't trust a God. I'm not to say that I'm not open to the idea of it. But it's like somebody, for instance, says, you have faith because you sat in that chair that it was going to hold you up. No, that's wrong, because I've had past experiences with chairs, so I can compare it to other chairs. So I know a chair has held me up before, so I trust that it's going to hold me up again. You have one single God who has failed people over and over, and you can't compare him to any other God. Do you see where I'm coming with this? I mean, you can't compare something you've never experienced to something that's not there.
When Carl Sagan said extraordinary events demand extraordinary evidence, what does he mean? What's that extraordinary evidence that Carl Sagan's looking for?
Well, what is the evidence? What was the extraordinary evidence that made you say, okay, this deity exists? What is so extraordinary to you?
Basically, if I look into the face of a Muslim and say, in order for me to believe in Allah and that Muhammad is his prophet, you have to give me extraordinary evidence, I'm convinced to the root of my being, I'm being incredibly intellectually dishonest. I'm playing a game.
I want to know, I'm Jewish, and, I was wondering, am I going to go to hell?
Oh, guess what? I worship a Jew.
Kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I worship a Jew.
So what's that mean? Shouldn't you be like bowing down to me or something? I mean,
No, you're not the Jew that I worship, so I'm not gonna bow down. Yeah.
so, well, what do you think? I mean, what's that mean for me?
What does it mean for you? I'll tell you exactly what it means. At the root, you're not Jew, he's not black, and I'm not white. At the root, you're a human being, he's a human being, and I'm a human being.
All right.
You cut yourself, you bleed. He cuts himself, he bleeds. I cut myself, I bleed. All three of us are created in the image of God. Now, we all three have sinned. I'm not better than you. I'm not better than him. He's not better than me. He's not better than you. We all three have sinned. Now, Jesus says that God loves all three of us so much that he sent his son Christ to bleed and die on a cross to forgive us and to give us eternal life. Now, this black man and this white man and this Jew have a decision to make. How are we going to respond to Jesus? Obviously, if Jesus was lying, doesn't matter how you respond to Jesus. But if Jesus was speaking the truth, his eternal destiny, your eternal destiny, and my eternal destiny hinge upon what we do with Jesus. That's why he's got to read the Gospels for himself. He can't take it from me. He doesn't know me from Adam. I've never met the man before. You can't take it from me. You got to go and read about this first century Jew, Jesus of Nazareth. And you got to figure out, was he blowing smoke? Was he lying? Or was he speaking the truth? He's got to decide that for himself, and I got to decide it for myself.
So what you're saying is that if I read into this, I'm going to be like saved?
And that's exactly what Jesus said. If you believe in him, he will save you from despair and give you hope. He will save you from guilt and forgive you. He will save you from death and give you eternal life.
So what you're telling me is that if I'm to read this, then I'm going to get sent to this like eternal place of just happiness. I mean, how does he know what's happy for me?
Oh, good question. That's a great question. The God who created you is so good and loves you so much. He's so wise and so intelligent that he's in a position to give you the best.
You see, that's like crazy though. I mean,
Why is that crazy?
Because people are entirely too different for there to be one place where everyone's universally happy. Like, are you kidding me? One man's treasure is another man's, you know. So it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I would personally think that if you were to go to this next life or whatever, afterlife,
right,
or whatever, then everybody, it's all personal. Like, I could be hanging out with a guy who's, who hates life. He's in hell, and I could be in heaven. It's just one place. It's just, I think it's completely ridiculous to say that, there's one place where everybody can just be happy.
Okay. All right. Well, I would plead with you to consider the fact that you have a mom and a dad. He's got a mom and a dad, and I got a mom and a dad. And my folks are not doing real well right now. Death is not too far away for either one of them. I don't like that. And I think if you're willing to think about your life deeply enough, you'll realize that the thought of your own parents dying isn't too thrilling to you. And I think he's the same way. Now, if there's life after death, where we can be reunited with loved ones who we really treasure and value, I think you'd be really interested. I think he'd be really interested. And I can promise you, I'm really interested.
It doesn't really answer my question, though. I mean,
obviously, sir, what I'm telling you is, what color the wallpaper is really doesn't matter. I want to see mom and dad, and I think you do also.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's another one. I mean, like, you ever heard of, you know what deja vu is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you ever think that, like, maybe the moment, you die, like, it's just like, you're instantly, like, reborn, as yourself. Like, it's just like a continuing, cycle, maybe,
Oh, no.
Why not?
I think, well, maybe
How
you're right.
do you explain deja vu?
I think that in my next life, I'm going to be Michael Jordan.
No,
because I love to play basketball.
But you see, that's not possible because you're you. What if you have to come
I'll be the white Michael Jordan.
Well, I mean, that's ridiculous.
What do you mean ridiculous, man? Come on, man. That's my trip. That's what I believe. I think I'm going to come back as Michael Jordan.
Huh?
I think I'm going to come back as Michael Jordan.
You mean
white Michael Jordan.
No, you come back as yourself.
Yeah, the white Michael.
Well, is your name Michael?
White Mike.
No, my name's not Michael.
Well, then you can't come back as white.
My point is, if you really want to just say it's all just a question of what we make up, well, I'll make it up. I like basketball. I'm coming back as white Michael Jordan. Obviously, there's no evidence to support that.
No. You see, no. What I'm saying, you're not hearing me right. I'm not saying like you die and then like, as soon as you die, you come back as like a new person. I'm saying like, how old are you? Like what? Like 50?
Man, you're good.
All right.
Here, you nailed that baby 1 year off.
Up or down?
Unfortunately, I'm older than 50 by 1 year.
Too bad.
It is too bad.
Well,
I'm envious of your youth.
See, what I'm saying is that what if you were to die like now?
Yes.
Like right here.
Yeah.
And as soon as you died, you would just instantly go back as yourself, like the moment you were born, and it was just a continuing cycle. Like so like instead, so like you would die right here, and then, like next second it would be like 1955.
Yeah.
And
Well, if you're going to say that, why are you ticked with me for saying I'm coming back as a white Michael Jordan?
Well, because you can. It's just a continuing life. Like,
Yeah, but you have no evidence to support that.
you have no evidence to support yours.
Exactly. There's not a shred of evidence I'm coming back as a white Michael Jordan. That's
There's not a
exactly
shred
what I'm
of evidence
saying.
you're- there's not a shred of evidence
ridiculous,
you're
isn't
coming
it?
back at all.
Totally ridiculous. Oh, no. No. To believe in resurrection is not totally ridiculous.
Why?
Because historically, the dead Christ came back. He rose from the dead. That's the only reason, real reason, I believe in life after death. Because historically, the dead Christ came back. I ain't going to be the white Michael Jordan coming back. I know that. But I do know I'm going to have life after death because Christ promised that to all who trust in him, and then he backed up that promise with a resurrection from the dead.
Your faith in Christianity, isn't that just a personal bias? What makes other religions not as correct?
Great question. If one of my children is sick, I go into the medicine chest in the bathroom, pull out a bottle of poison, and give the content of that bottle to my sick child. I don't care how sincere, how genuine I am. My child will not get well after digesting that poison. My child will get sicker and possibly die. I don't care how sincere I am. The legitimacy of your belief is not based on your sincerity. You can be sincerely wrong, sir. The legitimacy of your belief is based on the legitimacy of the object that you have chosen to trust in. So the question is Jesus Christ reliable or is he not? Is Buddha reliable or is he not? Is Confucius reliable or is he not? Is Muhammad reliable or is he not? That's the question. And I think the only way you're going to answer that, obviously, is by studying each one that you are considering to be a serious option for your consideration. And I'm standing here saying, please consider Jesus Christ very seriously by going to the source documents, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, reading them, and asking yourself, does the evidence point to Christ being reliable, or does the evidence point to him being unreliable?
That's a very good point, and I hope. But I have people who tell me, Christians, that people who take their faith seriously in Muhammad or other people, they're wrong. And I don't.
That's absolutely correct. If Muhammad spoke the truth, I am wrong in believing in Jesus. If the avatars of Hinduism spoke the truth, I am in for a very difficult next reincarnation. No question about it. If Muhammad spoke the truth, I'm going straight to hell. Because I'm a blasphemer. I worship Jesus Christ as God in human form. So if Muhammad spoke the truth, I'm going to hell. But if Jesus Christ spoke the truth, I'm going to heaven because I put my faith and trust in him.
But isn't all it is then, doesn't it all that comes down to is a personal bias?
No, it comes down to what is true, what is real.
To you.
No, in reality.
To you.
Okay, fine. Then approach your next exam that way. Go into your next exam, allow the real you to genuinely flow out all over that exam paper. And then when your professor hands back a flunking grade, you go back to your professor and say, time out, professor, this is the real me. This is my perception of reality. This is who I really am. And the professor's going to look you in the face and say, your perception of reality is incorrect. You just flunked the exam.
You're choosing Pascal's wager. You're going for the benefits of one over the other, and you're saying that an infinite reward is much better than an infinite punishment. So you're going to go for, that's exactly what you're saying.
It is not. No, it is not. I'll get into Pascal's wager with you if you want, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying to this gentleman is, the legitimacy of my belief is not determined by my sincerity. It's not determined by my passion or my fervency. It is determined by the reliability of the object I've placed my faith in. You put your faith in Jimmy Jones and follow him down to Guyana and drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid, and you can be very genuine. I would argue you're genuinely wrong. Sincerely wrong. You can follow David Koresh down to Waco, Texas, and get blown up in an inferno with him. You can be very sincere and very genuine. I would argue you're genuinely wrong. You can follow Hugh Hefner's philosophy and could be convinced that the real purpose of life is to stimulate your nerve endings and go through orgasm as many times as you can. I am convinced you're making a humongous mistake. There's a lot more to human existence than going through orgasm. And yet, if you want to believe that, that's your choice, obviously. I respect your right to choose that, but I am deeply concerned. Or you can believe that the real purpose of life is to get a good education at Cal Poly, to get the highest paying job possible you can. So you can have your nice house, drive your nice car, and have your nice vacation, one on the shore and one in the mountains skiing. And I'm going to say to you, sir, I am deeply concerned about materialism. I don't think it tells the whole story. I think you're mistaken in putting your faith in materialism.
The object you place your legitimacy is based on how much faith you have in it.
Yeah, now the question is the object of your faith reliable? Or is the object of your faith going to mess you up? And what's a midlife crisis? A midlife crisis is a guy who thought the real purpose of my life was to climb the corporate ladder, to have a high-paying job, to have it all materially. And here I am, in my 50s, and now suddenly I begin to realize, oops, there's more to life than making money. There's more to life than a nice vacation. Oops, I'm going through a midlife crisis because I've leaned the ladder of my life up against the wrong wall. It ain't delivering the goods the way I thought when I was in university.
To know that you said that you have a criteria for, you want to look at all these different religions and decide on one and follow that. But before you really accept Jesus and before you actually look into it, you should have a criteria for which one are you going to accept and why. So can you go through maybe some of the criteria? You already mentioned that in order to really know God in the Islamic faith, you have to read Arabic. So you said you had a philosophical problem with that. It seems like one of your criteria is ease of readability or ease of getting to know God. So I just want you to go through maybe what your criteria is before we really think about why Jesus. How does Jesus fit in that criteria?
Okay, great question. My point about having a problem with having to learn Arabic in order to know God is not just out of the blue, I got a problem with that. Rather, it begins with the incredible respect that the Quran communicates for Jesus. Muhammad taught that Jesus was a prophet of God. In fact, a devout Muslim has far more respect for Jesus than the typical American. A devout Muslim believes Jesus was born of a virgin, ascended to heaven, and is coming back a second time. That's a lot more than a lot of Americans believe. So a devout Muslim has far more respect for Jesus than the typical American. But you see, my philosophical problem is this. Jesus comes and says, I'm for the world. Come to me. You don't have to learn Greek or Aramaic. Come to me. And Muslims respect him and say, that's good, that's good. But then they say the real miracle is the Quran. And in order to really understand the real miracle of God, you have to learn Arabic. Well, how can you move from Jesus, who's for the whole world, to saying, come to me, in any language? All of a sudden you move to Arabic saying, okay, you got to really learn Arabic in order to understand a miracle of God. That's the internal inconsistency.
What are some of the other criteria that you have for deciding on which one is reliable? Because you said you have to have your sources being reliable. So how do you construct a criteria for that source being reliable as opposed to another? Because all of them...
Good. I insist that both the Quran and the New Testament give us very accurate, historically fair presentations of both Muhammad and Jesus. What's the criteria that I personally use to determine credibility of a historical document?
And not just for the Quran and the New Testament, but also for the Old Testament and for Buddha and for Confucius and all that.
You bet. Whenever I'm confronted by a document that claims to be historical, I'm a skeptic, but not a cynic. I don't reject history as bunk. That's why I would debate someone who says the Holocaust never took place. It's just a Jewish plot. No, we can know something historically. Now, I've got 4 tests that I use to determine historicity. If you don't like my tests, I promise I won't take it personally, but I will press you. You come up with your own tests that you use consistently. My 4 tests are internal consistency, literary style, archaeological evidence, and manuscript evidence. First one, internal consistency. I read the document. If there are major contradictions within the document, I question its reliability. But when you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll notice there's a tremendous internal consistency. Second test, literary style. Is the document couched in the following type of language? Once upon a time in the land of Nod, Wink and Blink and Nod took a boat ride. That's fairy tale. That's what that literary style is. The literary style of the Gospels is, at this time, in this place, with these people around, this took place. That's historical narrative.
But isn't Genesis written the first way?
Good.
It says, in the beginning there was this, and then there was... It doesn't really... It's very poetic. It actually repeats that God says this was good, and it's more...
You are absolutely correct. Great point. Genesis chapter 1 is comprised of 8 4-line Hebrew poems. Very good. You read well. That's why I would not treat Genesis chapter 1 as historical narrative, because that's not the literary style. And you go to the Psalms, and it's all poetry, isn't it? And you go to the book of Revelation, and it's apocalyptic literature. That sure is not historical narrative. That's apocalyptic, highly symbolic literature, Revelation. But the Gospels, where we read about Jesus, are historical narrative. At this time he did this, he said that, we saw him. But the Gospels do contain parable, allegory, simile, metaphor. When Jesus says, I am the light of the world, he's not claiming to be a 100-watt light bulb. I mean, that's not fair. You've got to allow him to use allegories, metaphor. Okay. The third one is archaeology. Are we talking about the island of Atlantis? No, we're talking about Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Rome. And the fourth one is manuscript evidence. How many manuscripts and how close to the date of the actual writing of the document are they? The New Testament that we have today has nothing to do with the Latin Vulgate of Jerome. The New Testament that we have today in English is based on over 5,200 Greek manuscripts or pieces of manuscript dated from the 1st through the 10th century AD, found from Rome, Italy, down around the Mediterranean to Alexandria, Egypt, all agreeing to an infinitesimal degree. There's no document from antiquity that can even approach the New Testament Gospels in manuscript evidence. That's why I accept it as historically reliable. But so do I do that with the Quran. The Quran is a very accurate presentation of what Muhammad taught. And the teachings of the Buddha have been very accurately preserved. And the Vedas and Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita of Hinduism, very accurate. I mean, people went to painstaking ends to accurately transmit these documents. So read them. And while you read them, ask yourself, what does the evidence point to?
To experience the evil, to experience the good. You're not gonna, when you experience evil, it makes you want to be a better person. It makes you want to experience good. And then you can appreciate the good because you've appreciated something so evil.
All right. And I'm sorry, ma'am. You know,
So I don't
as a pastor, I have to go to the hospital, okay?
Place and you have to accept Jesus because I feel like you can experience these two things during your life.
Ma'am, as a pastor, I go to the hospital on a regular basis.
Right.
I don't sit with a family whose baby is dying and say, you know, I hope that this all gives us a deeper appreciation of beauty and goodness in life.
But
I don't need to see a baby die in order to appreciate life. Do you?
Huh?
Do you need to see a baby die in order to appreciate life?
You have to learn lessons in order to appreciate life. If you're not learning anything, then you can't appreciate life.
Good. Let's learn lessons.
But you learn lessons from the bad that you experience on Earth. Otherwise, there would be no reason for it.
Good. Just because this man has been the recipient of racism doesn't mean that that had to occur in order for me to appreciate the value and dignity of all of human life. Yes, ma'am, I can hate racism as a result of listening to this gentleman share with me the racism he's had to endure. But ma'am, I don't have to have him go through racism in order for me to appreciate the dignity of all of human life.
But it's individual. You have to go through something that's going to make you appreciate the good on Earth, so you're not so worried about the afterlife.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry.
Well, ma'am, if I really enjoy this gift of life that God has given me, why wouldn't I want life after death? Why wouldn't I want heaven?
Because you're here now.
Yeah, but I got a date with death. The statistics on death are overwhelming. 1 out of 1 die. So I'm going to die, you're going to die. If I really like life, then maybe I should ask, is there life after death?
Well, why are you so worried about that?
For the same reason you are.
I'm not worried about life after death because I'm living right now.
Oh, really?
I'm able to appreciate what's good and what's bad, and I learn from what's bad so I can appreciate what's good while I'm here.
What are you going to do if you get cancer?
After here.
What are you going to do if you get cancer?
I don't know.
Oh, come on.
If I got cancer, it'd be a terrible, awful thing, and I would experience a hell on earth.
What would you do?
And because I've experienced that hell on earth, I would be able to, because I'm able to accept that that's part of life, I can accept the good things that are part of life too, and they're better because of that.
Let me tell you what I would do if I got cancer. I'd go to the best oncologist I could find and find a way to beat cancer. What are you going to do if you get hit by a car out here?
I die.
Go to the hospital.
I think you'd go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital.
And you'd find the best doctor you could to put your life back together again, right?
Okay.
So you affirm life the same way I affirm life. Now we have a date with death. Don't you think it'd be wise to ask the question, is there life after death? And if so, how do I get there?
No, because I don't think it matters because we're here right now.
Why are you getting an education?
Because that's what, I don't know, because...
Well, I think you better ask yourself that question. If you're paying as much money as you are and studying as hard as you are, you better ask yourself, why am I getting an education?
I like to open my mind to other things. I'm trying to open my mind to why there could be a life, why you're so worried about a life after death, but I'm asking you to open your mind to maybe the fact that you can experience heaven on earth, and therefore you don't need to be so worried about the afterlife. Because you're so worried about what's going to happen. Why can't you just accept what's here and now?
Why?
Why?
Because in the here and the now, I perform funerals as a minister. And when I'm going to a funeral home, and everybody's looking around and saying, oh, doesn't she look beautiful in the casket there? I feel like saying, you got to be kidding me. She's not beautiful. She's dead.
But don't you learn something from death? You should learn lessons from death.
Yeah, you should learn a lot from death.
Because it makes you feel...
By gollies, I better go out and study and figure out if there's life after death or not.
No, it's not a study, it's a feeling.
It's a feeling?
You feel things
No,
from
it's not a
death,
feeling.
Have you ever had someone die in your life and you have that feeling of their death and you experience a hell on earth because they've died? And so because of that, you're able to embrace life?
Ma'am, I embrace life
You're worried about the
as a tremendous gift from God. And now the question is, can this gift go on, or does this gift end at death?
I don't know if it ends at death, but I think we're here to learn lessons.
Good. Well, then learn from Jesus, who said, I am the resurrection and the life.
I think what Jesus was saying is that we have to accept a heaven and a hell on earth because...
Where did he say that?
I don't know that he... I think that's what he was trying to teach because he was teaching about love and forgiveness and...
Yes.
And
taught about love and forgiveness.
That you can understand better once you understand a hell on earth, because you don't want to be a bad person because you're stuck in that. But you have to be able to embrace that hell on earth, and you have to be able to accept that hell on earth in order to have good, because you can't have one without the other.
Absolutely. Kick him in the jaw. You just don't appreciate good unless I kick you in the jaw?
Well, you can't have one without the other.
What does that mean?
It's harmony. You can't have heaven without hell. There's a reason.
Do you have to be raped to know that rape is wrong?
No, but you have to go through. You have to live life to understand why there's bad and why there's good, so that you make good decisions, and so you do good things because you want to help other people, because you know that is what's good, because you find it through hell on earth. I think in order to have that moral goodness, you have to be able to see the bad side of it too, because when you see the bad side, then you understand what good is.
All right.
And why you should do good.
All right, but just please read the Gospels, and if you read them fairly, you're going to realize Jesus did not say that heaven is on earth, and he didn't say that hell is on earth.
But he preached things such as love and justice.
Absolutely.
And that is a moral goodness.
You bet.
I think he probably does understand why you have to experience. I think it's more abstract. I don't think it's something. He was just a teacher. He wasn't.
Well, he claimed to be more than a teacher.
God might be something inside of you. God could be this divine moral goodness that you're supposed to find. It's not necessarily that he's this spirit that you're going to die and be with at the end of your life, but you accept it during your lifetime.
Oh, now come on. You know the Lord's Prayer, don't you? Jesus taught us to pray, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. He did not teach us to pray, wow, I'm impressive, I'm God.
No, I'm not saying, why can't God be inside of everybody? Why can't it be something that's universal, but...
I think I understand you better now. Your point is, Cliff, if I get heavenly minded, I'm going to be no earthly good. If I focus on heaven, I'm going to miss life in the here and the now. Now, the opposite is true. Mother Teresa, Dr. Martin Luther King,
Right.
did what they did because they had a vision of heaven. They understood how messed up earth was.
Right.
And they spent their life trying to make this messed up earth more like heaven will be.